Casey mentioned a few times in his videos that what makes his videos good is a 3-act structure. He calls it setup, conflict, resolution. I think these may be slightly misleading titles for these 3 parts. I would call these the promise, the journey, and the payoff. This is a dopamine cycle that keeps the viewer invested. I would also argue that he uses this multiple times in each vlog instead of just once. Act 1, the promise. The purpose of the first act is to create expectation that will propel the audience through Act 2. An easy way to make a promise is to show something that will happen later in the vlog at the start of the vlog. This is super important. One thing that I noticed within the first minute of one of Casey's vlogs is that he always mentions something that is still going to happen.
I'm leaving for Finland today. I have to leave for the airport by 2:30. I'm going to speak at this event right now in Midtown. I gotta get back to the studio, then I gotta get to the airport. I gotta go.
He barely ever talks about the past in the start of a vlog unless it's relevant to what's going to happen. He always says stuff along the lines of, I'm going here now, or I'm going to do this thing today. Try to count how long it takes before he actually gets to the part where he gives you the payoff to these promises. Casey is a master of expectation. It's also worth mentioning that the title of the content is also part of Act 1, the promise. Instead of calling his vlog Vlog 206, or even worse, A Day in the Life, which many YouTubers do, he calls his episode something exciting like The Day I Almost Died or Trapped in a Movie Theater. These would be good titles even for Hollywood movies or TV shows. Now contrast this with regular vloggers. They call their videos something like First Day in London or My First Vlog. Would these be movies that you would be willing to watch? They create no expectation in their thumbnails or titles. There's no intriguing question. The title is usually something like My Day. Another common mistake I see is people also talk about stuff that has already happened without showing any of it, without the purpose of telling a story, or they talk about things that tend to happen without showing anything. Instead of saying what is happening or just describing what is around you, instead focus on what is going to happen. Forgetting to create expectation is the biggest difference I see between Casey's content and other people's content. Act 2, the journey. Act 2 is usually transitional. You go from the promise to the payoff in an interesting way. This part is usually super visually interesting. It involves drone shots, time lapses, rapid cuts, and even the occasional animation. If you think of a Casey Neistat video, this is usually the part that you're thinking of. What is extremely important is that everything that happens in this part should be relevant to the promise in some way. The biggest mistake I see is that people either only focus on this part or completely disregard it. Before Casey started vlogging, one would see people shoving the camera in their face and cut out all forms of visual storytelling, essentially cutting out the second act. If someone were to mention that they were going to the supermarket, they would simply cut to them walking in the supermarket in the next shot without showing how they got there in a visually interesting way, essentially missing a massive opportunity to create an intriguing story. This would be the equivalent of Simba singing about how he can't wait to be king and then cutting to the end of the movie where he becomes king. You get the promise and the payoff, but there's no second act and thus no story. The other problem I see is that people only focus on the second act without any promise, or they add interesting transitional visuals without it being relevant to any payoff. And this mostly happened after Casey became popular and people started emulating his style. They only copied the most memorable parts of his videos while missing the importance of the first and last act. A good example of this is I once watched a video of a guy explaining something about computers right before cutting to a drone shot of his house for no reason at all. It's irrelevant and therefore loses the attention of the audience. The second act always serves the promise. Although the second act isn't technically necessary, it's the only thing that makes your movie memorable. It's the part where you get entertained. Act 3. Payoff. You make good on your promise in Act 1, or not. Casey arrives at his destination, be that the airport, home, or a foreign country.
Hi, pretty face! Hi, baby girl!
And usually spends time with Francine. Whatever promise he made at the start of the video has been met with reward. Otherwise it would be just a bad video. Having no payoff would be the equivalent of Maximus being killed in the last act without killing the evil king first. People often complain about videos that don't fulfill on their promises by calling them clickbait. If you want to make a good video, make good on your promise. The only other alternative to making good on your promise is to give the audience something other than what they asked for, but something that is just as good. This is often known as a plot twist, and it is very common in Christopher Nolan films. I haven't seen Casey do this much, but I think it's a very interesting alternative. If you want to hold your audience attention, you need to Act 1, make a promise. Act 2, take the audience on a journey to that promise. Act 3, give them the payoff. And you need to do that constantly.